All right, everybody, Smokin Mo here. Just want to talk a little bit about injecting your pork butts and your brisket, your bigger cuts of meats that we explained in the book a little bit. What we have in front of us here is an array of spices and sauces that we use to do our injections. You can use combinations of all these when you're wanting to inject meat. Today what we're going to work on though is two different types of injections. One will be an apple juice with the Worcestershire sauce and also with the Tabasco. So it'll be 2 cups of apple juice, a 1/4 cup of Worcestershire sauce, and a tablespoon of Tabasco. We're also going to work on, for our brisket, we're going to use a package of Au Jus, and we're also going to use a tablespoon of Better Than Boullion, and then we're going to use some mesquite liquid smoke. Okay, so we're going to get started here on making our first injection, which is our apple juice, Worcestershire, and Tabasco injection for our pork butt. So what we'll do is we'll put 2 cups into our holder. Our Worcestershire sauce. And I've removed the inner cap, just so you know, or you'd be sitting here trying to put a 1/4 cup of this stuff in there. It'd take you forever. So there's our 1/4 cup and 1 tablespoon. Okay, so now that we've got everything in our little cup, we want to take our whisk. And now that that is there, we're ready to start injecting. Now what we have here is a 7.5 pound pork butt. As you can see, it's about a 1/4 inch trim already. This came straight from the store this way, so there's not much I had to do to this. I trimmed a little fat off the edges, but for the most part with pork butts, you want to keep as much fat on them as you can, so when they render down after 8 to 10 hours of smoking, you have very, very soft, juicy meat, okay? So the first thing we're going to want to do is grab our injection needle. So this is our injection needle. I got this one at Walmart. It was about $4. I've used it probably 20, 30 times. So that gives you an idea. It doesn't take a lot of money to do some injections here. All right, so we want to put the needle down into the cup, pull back on the plunger, and I usually will start in the middle just so I can start getting some good practice on how to do this. So I'll plunge that down, and right there I just hit the bone. So we'll give this a little bit of an injection, plunge down and pull back at the same time. Plunge down, pull back at the same time. That way you're getting multi-layers of meat with injection. Same thing here. Now we're down deep into that thing, so we want to pull. What our goal is to get both 2 cups of injection inside of this pork butt, and it gives you a lot of good, not only flavor down there, but for the most part, moisture is what you're looking for, okay? So we'll just keep going here. And you can see this thing swelling and swelling and swelling. That's a good thing. Put some more right here. We're just doing this about 1 inch apart, 1 inch apart. All the way in, pull up on the way out. You can go back in. When you start getting towards the edge here, you don't want to do any injecting through the sides at all, because you're trying to fill this butt up with lots of injection mix, and if you start poking in the sides, it'll start leaking out as you cook. We'll just keep on going. Now we're going to start hitting some areas that are considered the most tender spots on the whole pork butt. And there's a horn muscle back here, and all this muscle around the outside. This is very soft, very good meat. So we're going to go down there and get a lot of good injection down in there. If you got some leakers, put your finger on it. Believe it or not, it helps get that juice down in there. Now there's one part on the side that I will inject, and I'll turn this around for you. And you can see this bone. This shoulder blade bone goes all the way across, so I'll usually come down here and get some nice injection down on that side. But that's about it. You can see that just squeeze. And okay, now there's another part of this pork we want to talk about. It's all this nice tender meat across the front, affectionately known as the money muscle. That's the muscle that is the most tender on this pork butt. We're going to go ahead and inject that thing really well. You can see it, the whole thing's swelling up nicely. So it's holding a lot of good injection for us. And then I like to hit just around the back side of that money muscle, which the money muscle continues back in here to a couple more muscles back here called the tubes. Those are also very tender. And if you ever seen pulled pork that has long, long striations of meat, that's where it comes from, the bottom of this pork butt. So the fat cap that we left on there before, that holds a lot of this juice that we're injecting in right now. That's why we always like to barbecue our butts fat side down. It collects all this juice and stays in there, and it actually helps radiate that heat out through the meat. So now we can go across here. We start seeing all the little dots that we had from our injection needles. Now we'll let this thing settle down for a couple of minutes, and then we'll try and get the rest of it back in there. Hit that money muscle real good again. It's holding a lot of good juice for us. Okay. That muscle here in this bone. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hold this. Very, very little juice was left in there. We're going to go ahead and take this one more time. Back here I can definitely feel some areas that didn't get hit. Very nice. Okay, and one more shot across that money muscle. Okay, so our pork is now done, and we'll go ahead and set that to the side. Remember, this is called pork butt, Boston butt. There's several names for this, but if you go down and talk to your butcher and tell him what you want, you just want a pork butt, he'll know exactly what you're looking for. Okay, so the next cut of meat we're going to work on now is our beef brisket. Right here we have an 11-pound beef brisket. This is called a full packer. So if you go to your butcher and tell him you want a full beef brisket, a whole beef brisket, packer, he'll know exactly what you're looking for. You can also look for a cut of meat just called the brisket flat. The brisket flat is just this section right here. Cooks a lot faster and probably a little more forgiving if you're just starting out. And I'll just give you a quick rundown. This end of the brisket is called the point or the decal. And this section right here is called the flat. And what you're going to see when you buy this, there's going to be a big hunk of fat right across through here. And as you can see, I've already trimmed that away. So if you go to Smokin Mo's How to Trim a Brisket video, it starts from beginning to end. You'll be able to see how we do the whole process. Okay, so for right now, we're going to inject a brisket. As you can see, there's striations in the meat that all go this way. What we're going to do is want to inject in that same pattern. So we're going to start down here on the corner, and we'll start injecting through here, all the way through this way, and then we'll finish up at the point, okay? So again, we have our injection needle, and we have our solution already made up. Again, this was 2 cups of water with 1 package of Au Jus, 1 tablespoon of better than Boullion, and a tablespoon of hickory liquid smoke, all right? So here we go. So we'll just kind of start down here, going with the pattern of the meat. And this one gets a little bit messy because it's very shallow for the first. Again, I'm pushing in and pulling back towards myself as I squeeze the plunger, and it gets a lot of injection all the way through that meat. We'll come down here, about 3 inches apart. 1 inch apart, 3 inches up to start from here. All right. Remember, with your injections, you want to, especially with the brisket injection, you have to heat this up to boiling to make this injection. I'll usually take it right after I boil that, stick it right into the fridge. It'll cool down at about a half hour down to 40 degrees. You just don't want to be injecting hot juice into this brisket and let it set for 12 hours. It could start forming bacteria. If you notice where my hand is strategically placed over this brisket, if you just heard that plunge I just made, that thing just shot up in the air. Had I not had my hand there, I would have had a face full of a nice Au Jus. This particular brisket, it took about 15 minutes to trim this morning. Once you've done a few of them, you'll get down to where it's not so labor intensive. I remember when I first started doing these briskets, it seemed like an eternity and I was cutting my knuckles and all that good stuff. At least today I still have all my fingers, so it's working out pretty well so far. Okay, now the point starts taking off in a different direction. You can see how the flat meat, all the grain is going this way. Now the point, all the grain's going this way. So it's very hard to get your injection needle in this way. So if you go with the grain, it seems to work out pretty good. Definitely like to get a lot of this injection through this flat. This is the area right through here that'll dry out the quickest on you, especially around these edges that are very thin. So you try and get as much injection in those as you can, and they'll stay good. Remember, on briskets, you're going to cook those to 160 degrees, and then you're going to foil wrap them. Okay, so don't forget that. Foiling is very good for these briskets. It helps render the fat and the collagen down. All the little, there's a lot of hard tissue on these things, and once you get them to 160, wrap them in foil, and I guarantee it will be a very soft brisket, very cuttable brisket. When the brisket hits 200 degrees, that's when you want to rest it. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if we can do this without losing our brisket. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and do, that was about 2 cups right there. I think this brisket has as much injection as it's going to take now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you how to go ahead and rub one of these things. What we typically will do, what I'll do a lot, is I always remove one glove and I have my nice little rub that I had made up last week. What I like to do is throw a little bit of rub in the bottom of this pan. And it's going to get on that fat. And what it does is after you cook this meat and you foil wrap it, a lot of that rub's on the bottom of that fat, and it's going to render down and give you a very good tasting au jus when it's all done. So what I'll do is I'm going to work the edges up here. I just have my little shaker here. I'll bring my hand around the edge. And I like to get the edges really well. We can roll these fat ones up. A lot of nice fat left over on the bottom of this. We've got a 1/4 inch trim. Again, the brisket video will show you a whole lot on how to trim these things so you don't have to worry about it too much. What we're doing is just getting a nice layer on the top, and we'll let that set for a couple minutes. Then we'll go by and just do one more layer. Briskets and butts get about 2 layers of rub on them. Don't scrimp on the rub. That's what gives your final product that nice bark on the top of this thing after it's cooked. And then when you start slicing it, all that good au jus and the combination of the bark down here gives you a great tasting brisket. Okay, and that's it for the brisket. Pork butt, we're going to go ahead and hit this one. So what I'll do is I'll hit the front side of this money muscle first because I have to roll around the back edge, the bottom edge here. These sides are really high. And we've got a nice layer on this pork butt. Get down in there a little bit, a little more on top of the money muscle. And just let this thing kind of set for a minute and we'll finish this off. All right, so this is wrapping up our pork butt injection. And you got a little bonus track in there. We went ahead and rubbed this one down so you can kind of get a feel for how that works. Now this, I recommend leaving these for at least 4 hours, but I like to do them for about 12 hours. So typically I'll rub these and inject them the night before, and I'll throw them on the pit the next morning. So 7 o'clock at night, go ahead and inject and rub. 7 o'clock or 6 the next morning, go ahead and throw them on your pit and let them run for about, this 10 pounder is probably going to run probably about 9-10 hours. And then this guy will run the same, I'm going to run these on the same pit. So that concludes our injection. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care and start smoking today.